If you look at the Google dictionary definition of intelligence, it is the ability to apply knowledge and skills. And there's a very big gap in that definition, and maybe you can think about what it is. For example, is it intelligent to apply knowledge and skills to cause acid rain, or to blow up one's own community, or to shoot everyone in the head that you get mad at? Because this is an application of skills and knowledge, the skill and knowledge physically and mentally of how to shoot a gun and how to distinguish between people you're mad at and people you're not mad at. And so, so is lighting sticks of dynamite under bridges that you're about to drive across. This also takes a tremendous amount of knowledge and skill about different pyrotechnic and chemistry skills, and knowing just how much dynamite to place so that the bridge will be collapsing as you drive over it. But we tend to say that this is crazy. And so if we call very smart people crazy for doing self-destructive or culturally destructive things, we see this definition of intelligence is not adequate. My first vague hint at the definition of intelligence came when I designed my homeschool program. And the question was, what skills could I learn that over the next 100 years would be valuable to the species? And that took me in a couple of different unique directions, and I studied subjects that were not available in the high school curriculum, and I dropped other studies that were pushed within the high school curriculum. And the reason was this pivot towards, when I asked myself, for example, would me learning algebra benefit the species over the next 100 years? And what benefit would that be exactly? Would me learning to think constructively and evaluate and solve problems benefit the species over the next 100 years? Would me learning to write about key issues that need attention be a useful skill and benefit the species? Or learning to cook healthy food? The focus in my self-designed homeschooling program was on usefulness, with an emphasis on things that were not as common. And to give that sense of emphasis, let's say you're a supply factory and you have 10,000 metal tubes, and you have 10,000 caps that screw on the metal tube, and you have 10,000 switches, and you've got 10,000 springs, and you've got 10,000 reflective mirrors and glass panels, and you've got 20,000 size D batteries. Well, you've almost got a flashlight. But if you only have 2 bulbs and 10,000 of all the other parts, then the value, the synergistic potential of the entire factory goes down to 2%. Because what you want are the missing pieces. You don't want more of the pieces you have in abundance. You want the missing pieces. So, for example, when I went into landscaping, everyone I knew in nurseries or people coming out of landscape university knew the Latin names of plants. And it's quite a big feat to memorize 5,000 names, 5,000 Latin names of Latin plants. Podocarpus macrophylla. I mean, these are not in common parlance, and then you've got to not just remember the name, but you've got to remember which name it applies to. And then you've got to remember a whole bunch about that plant. And so this takes up a tremendous amount of study, and it's very common knowledge in the horticultural industry. Now, at the same time, when I was meeting dozens of people who could rattle off these Latin names, I was seeing clients with failed septic systems. And I discovered a gap. And the gap went like this. The septic system installer doesn't know anything about landscaper and doesn't take the initiative to educate landscapers. The septic system installer doesn't necessarily educate the homeowner. The homeowner doesn't know that the septic system installer isn't educating them, and they don't know that the landscapers that come later are not educated in septic system knowledge. So the septic system installer, the homeowner, and the landscaper are all ignorant. And they're ignorant about their own ignorance. They don't, they don't have, they're not piecing these things together. And I would learn about them and be curious what could be done. And it seemed to me that if I went and interviewed one of the best septic system designers and installers in the country that helped, write some of the national codes and, really understood what made a septic system work and what made it collapse, that I could be a landscaper that was knowledgeable about how to landscape over septic systems. And that this was a missing piece. And so in deciding whether to spend 2 years learning the names of Latin plants that was very commonly available, meaning I could point to any number of people and say, what's the Latin name of this plant? They could tell me. But I couldn't point at anyone who could tell me or homeowners how to landscape over their septic systems. And not knowing the Latin name of a plant did not damage the plant, believe it or not. Whether you called it, Podocarpus macrophylla or Podocarpus icy blue, it was not going to, it was not going to change how the plant grew. The plant didn't seem to have feelings about being cause its name, etc., etc. However, if a landscaper did X, Y, and Z over a septic system, that might be a $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 expense, major uphaul, destroyed plants, etc. And so it seemed that filling in the missing piece was more valuable. And so I've always steered myself to what I think is the most valuable missing piece, because that's how synergy creates well-being. It's the missing pieces. In other words, if you've got 10,000 tubes ready to become a flashlight and you've got 2 bulbs, and you have to choose between ordering bulbs or another 10,000 tubes, an intelligent person orders the bulbs. And another way of looking at this is that if you can produce another 100 million citizens that all know exactly what the last generation knew, and none of whom know, for example, the skill of emotional literacy or the dynamic of traumatic deterioration into PTSD and traumatic repair, then it is citizens who have knowledge about these missing links that are going to be able to be more valuable than another citizen that already knows what everyone else knows. And so one of the things then that underlies all of this, and my own definition of intelligence, is that intelligence can be measured by the efficiency with which a human being utilizes time, money, and natural resources available to them to create sustainable well-being. So if by my skill and application of knowledge I create more well-being than you do with the same amount of resources, then my behavior can be measured as more intelligent. Why? Because surviving feels good. Survival and security and pleasure in survival and blossoming into love and belonging feels good. And it is that feeling good that human beings are after. Meaning, if it felt great to die and felt terrible to live, then one could measure intelligence by the efficiency of facilitating a rapid death. But since, as a general rule, we have more pleasure and drive to live in order to experience well-being, not in order to suffer. We're not saying, please let me have a long life filled with pain and misery. No, it's to have a long life filled with pleasure, with abundance, with feelings that are rich and satisfying and meaningful to us. In other words, that we feel good when we look at our life. So that is the ultimate goal of every human being, is to feel good and minimize unnecessary suffering or minimize unnecessary moments of feeling bad. We want to feel good, we don't want to feel bad. We therefore aspire to do the things and learn the things and say the things and think the things and feel the things that make us feel good. We aspire to that. We admire to that. We envy those who have a better repertoire of skills and talents that they're exercising to feel great, or to at least put on the appearance of a great and successful life. We admire people who can make money because we believe that money can make us feel good and reduce our feeling bad feelings. And so in this situation, every human action must ultimately be measured in terms of its hierarchy of success in human well-being. Now, if I get more pleasure in my family's happiness than in my own, then feeling good will be to increase the well-being of my family. Much like a lover, if you get off on your partner's orgasm, then your peak pleasure comes from facilitating multiple orgasms. And you're a more sophisticated lover if you can reliably produce them. Why? Because they feel good. So we have a kind of a convoluted thing in which, sometimes it feels good to have revenge. Sometimes one person feeling good creates a problem for another person. But one of the things that we know from a scientific study of the ripple effect of feelings is that just like diseases, feelings ripple out. And so if you create 2 units of happiness for yourself at the expense of 1,000 units of causing suffering for other people, that suffering will ripple out, and it becomes harder to have the trust and cooperation and focus to repeat the exchange. Whereas if I create 2 units of well-being and simultaneously create 100 units of well-being for the ripple effect of people all around me, then there is more well-being, which leads to more creativity, among other things, to be able to not be in a fear-based survival repetitive mode, but in the creative areas of the brain, you can imagine more rich and beautiful realities when you're not in pain. It is out of imagination that most physical well-being emerges. if we think I'm warm because of this nice turtleneck, that was someone's imagination. And they weren't imagining that when they were running and trying to pay rent with their landlord. They were imagining it when they felt relaxed and centered and their mind could open rather than be in this tunnel vision of, I've got to pay the rent, I've got to pay the rent. And so I didn't create this turtleneck. I didn't create the color, the factory, the loom, the marketing material. I didn't do anything. But because other people were imagining, because other people were dreaming in the last 100 years, and what about this and what about that, and because other people were dreaming about things they wanted to do and own and stuff, and so they went to work, I have a beautiful garment that keeps me warm and comfortable because other people were imaginative and other people dreamed. Now, if ripples out of pain deteriorate the ability to dream and imagine in creative terms, then it is destructive at a species level to create massive amounts of pain and fear and trauma in citizenry around the world. Those are people that cannot creatively think and dream and contribute in an easy way. So we then have to consider the fact that we are part of a single species, meaning that the synergy of someone inventing the loom and someone inventing thread and someone inventing shipping containers and someone inventing shipping and someone inventing catalogs and someone putting those catalogs online and someone inventing a credit card protocol, meaning we're dealing with a cacophony of creativity in individual minds that were sparked by a certain amount of safety, by a certain amount of time to dream and create. And that is benefiting every human being on the planet to one degree or another. And so the synergy becomes a very important paradigm or framework within which to analyze one's own behavior. So, for example, when I become a landscaper that doesn't know the name of Latin plants, but that does know how to landscape over septic systems and can access the names of Latin plants when needed online, in other words, fewer septic systems go bad. Now, it takes me 20 minutes as a knowledgeable landscaper to explain to people exactly how to avoid a $40,000 mistake that might otherwise happen. So if it takes me 20 minutes to save someone $40,000, is that more intelligent than taking 10 years to, or a year to spend, save someone $40,000? Or do something else entirely that doesn't save them any money and just leave that open to, to a regular drain in the economy, because that money could be going to education or something else. Instead, it's redoing something that could have easily been avoided. So, intelligence as the efficiency with which well-being is created with a given unit of energy, time, money, and natural resources, 3 examples of energy. With a given unit, we can see that the mathematics of well-being are facilitated exponentially by synergy, which is cooperative effort in a creative and intelligent way. And we know that people who are out of survival and security and who have a sense of love and belonging are far more capable of participating collaboratively and synergistically and valuably in the creation of stuff, which means that countries that facilitate, such as Denmark, that facilitate the easy probability that every Danish citizen will have a college education, will have free health care, will have housing, and effective job training, all facilitates to an enormous amount of creative well-being. better dreaming, more focus on quality of life, attention to detail, and a very present and human culture, a very intelligent culture in terms of the amount of well-being that can be measured subjectively and objectively in Denmark relative, for example, to the United States. My assessment is that the average Danish citizen has a 450% higher quality of life than the average American citizen. And they're not using more hours of the day, they're using less. They're working less hours. They're spending more quality time with family. And in many cases, they're not spending more money. And they're consuming less natural resources. So it's better. So you can say that's a more intelligent culture. Intelligence is the efficiency with which energy is transformed into human well-being. And this is a very important distinction because while it's obvious that, for example, if you learned carefully how to bang a hammer and then started banging your own head, most people would say you were crazy, you're not intelligent. Intelligent people don't hurt themselves. And that's a clue that applying knowledge and skill is not the full answer of intelligence. Because if we call people crazy who hurt themselves and their property, who waste time and money, who get themselves into sordid, unnecessary problems, if we say that that's crazy, then to be intelligent is to do the opposite. Now, since we all want well-being, it is intelligent to pursue well-being, but it is more intelligent to pursue it more efficiently. In other words, if my dream is to be happy, and I'm happy and feel good when I eat ice cream, so I'm just going to eat ice cream all the time, we could say that that is a somewhat inefficient as I get more and more obese and as it becomes more disgusting and stuff. Well, it's not going to be an efficient path to well-being. Spending 10 minutes a morning doing yoga, which may bring in relaxation and joy for, maybe a 5 to 20% impact over the whole day, becomes very intelligent because your health improves, your attitude improves, your clarity of thought improves. It takes 10 minutes and that ripples through the day. You feel better during the day and you feel good doing the yoga. So that's a double whammy, in terms of double intelligence. You've got well-being doing it and you've got well-being after. So if 10 minutes of yoga can improve the quality of someone's life by 10 or 15%, and if going to a shooting range improves people's well-being -5, they think they're safer, but they just go out with ringing ears and feeling a bit shaken, and they don't really feel any happier than when they went in. Well, then you'd have to say that consuming bullets and gunpowder and making loud noises and all that is creating less well-being than yoga. Now, if the gunmanship, etc., really does lead one to protect and save one's family's life, well, then all that noise and stuff is worth it. But is that supported by the statistic? Meaning, are you more likely to die of obesity, in which case saving your family's life may be learning about the different ways that sugar and starches and dairy make people fat when consumed in a sedentary lifestyle, and that proteins and vegetables and to some extent fruits and nuts and things and help people lose weight. Well, then it's more intelligent to focus on the things that are actually making the difference in your own or your family's or your culture's well-being. So if we apply personal intelligence, one of the first things we have to know is gather knowledge about well-being. things like ecological awareness of the way that air becomes, trees give out their breath and we take the oxygen in, we give the carbon dioxide back. This is an ecological cycle. And so we might study the fact that ecological cycles are the most sustainable. Well, if you're looking for efficiency, you want sustainable. Because if someone can get nature to do 80% of the environmental building for a beautiful, healthy body, or you can cut nature down and then poison the body with diesel fumes and this, well, it's more intelligent, it's more efficient to partner with nature. So you can see that partnering rather than fighting is more energy conserving, for one. You can see the fact that doing something that brings high yields of well-being, such as 10 minutes of yoga a day, are more intelligent than going out and shouting and cursing at people on the street for 10 minutes a day. You can see that learning relationship skills that lead to high levels of harmony and cohesiveness and enjoyment and low crime, because criminals, by definition, do not feel a part of the group, which begins before the crime, and they feel like they cannot easily create the same level of well-being on their own. So there's two variables. In an intelligent culture, everyone's survival and security of survival and sense of love and belonging is inherent to the culture. It doesn't matter how it happens exactly, but when everyone makes it their business to see that those around them have a safe legal place to sleep and warm, nourishing food and a sense of feeling welcome, the propensity towards crime and survival-based behavior and revenge and all that goes way down. And so it's more intelligent to facilitate a culture with that environment. The efficiency with which time, money, and natural resources are turned into human well-being. So there are conversations that are inefficient, there are conversations that are highly efficient, meaning there are conversations that in 20 minutes leave both people exploding with value and choices to take in the world that will improve their well-being. There's conversations that leave you numb and tired at the end. The former is a more intelligent conversation. If you take a piece of wood and build a wood stove that sends 90% of that heat up the chimney, and someone else makes a wood stove that puts 95% of that into heat in the room, the latter is a more intelligent stove design. Because for the exact same chunk of wood, i.e. unit of energy, you have created not 9 times, 900% more well-being. Well, that's considered intelligent design. Well, it's intelligent design always referencing human well-being. Even, the military and all of that, it's referencing the idea of well-being. Putting money into a tank rather than a school is of course reducing the well-being. But if it is deterring an invasion and thus keeping the school, or if that is believed to be so, then having more tanks facilitates either the reality or the illusion of well-being, meaning it's based on the belief. If you believe it's beneficial, you will feel better knowing it's there, even if that is not the case. Even if it is not beneficial, you will feel better. And so here you have the gap between someone behaving intelligently with false knowledge is actually not intelligent. But it'll create that illusion. If you believe that tax cuts to the wealthy are the best way to help the poor, and you really believe that, and you want to help the poor, then a tax cut will make you feel good. until such time as data is revealed to show that that's not the most efficient way of helping the poor. Helping the poor is sometimes a more direct and efficient way. But all of these things in terms of intelligence are not about theory. They're about statistical impact. I have a theory that arsenic will cure heart disease. All my patients are dead. The statistical outcome of impact is what to pay attention to when measuring intelligence. The bottom line, however, is if you look through this lens of efficiency of creating well-being, one of the metrics in there is garbage, and in this metric we're incredibly unintelligent because the average American, such as myself, will leave behind them 102 tons of waste, which is 102 tons of energy that my culture knows how to put into a form that it doesn't know how to deal with and doesn't know what to do with. And so it puts it in a big hole in the ground. 102 tons. Well, you can say that's incredibly inefficient. And you'd look back 500 years to peoples on this same land, and you see the sacred way that they killed and utilized not only the fur of the bison, the meat of the bison, the bone of the bison, the ornamentation, the fur, the whole bison was consumed. And you look at the amount of waste, ecologically speaking, of a Native American Indian 500 years ago upon their death. Where's the hole in the ground, and how much energy is left there, from their visit? Their body, either cremated and becoming fertile ash, where the minerals in the body condense into the ash and fertilize the grassland, or a hole in the ground, and all of the natural nutrients within the blood and within the muscles feeding the ecology that fed the body. And there is zero waste. So you can say that the Native Americans on that metric are more intelligent. They don't create waste to begin with. They don't even have the idea of waste because we are a part of the earth and the earth is a part of us. And the earth is sacred, and so we are sacred. And so everything that we consume with attention and with an awareness of our role in the balance. And so there is no waste. If we look at the amount of vitality and well-being in a typical Native American Indian, there will be areas where they have more and areas where they have less well-being. But the energy expenditure in natural resources is undeniably thousands and thousands of percent lower. Zero waste to 102 tons of waste. So there's a little bit of an overview of intelligence. And if you understand this, you will know that the most intelligent person in the room is actively thinking about and designing and influencing the room to move in a direction of sustainable, efficient human well-being for everyone. Because within a synergistic framework, if you can click with 20 other people in specialized ways to create a piece of knowledge or an experience or to meet a need that no one of you could meet alone, you are meeting needs for other human beings, and as they do the same, they're meeting needs for you. Everything that we see in this frame is a response to profound human synergy. And in this way, the desire, the underlying desire for the efficient creation of human well-being is love. Self-love and value that ripples out to everyone else in the understanding that the greatest form of self-love is often to synergize and partner with other people who love themselves, who have unique talents in such a way that combined intentions, time, efforts, and knowledge can create a synergistic explosion of well-being that is far more than the amount of well-being that one can create by working alone. Now, this is metaphorically symbolized with money, where money, bits of paper and little numbers, become a representation of well-being. And so in that sense, if I make money, but a village gets poisoned in the process, or oil leaks out in the jungle, etc., that's not counted in the equation. And this is the problem with the abstraction, where there's a lack of touch with the underlying asset upon which the symbolic asset, bits of paper, are based. And so it's a more intelligent analysis to analyze the well-being created by any series of actions and the rhythm and pace of those actions, and to use that information to continually measure and expand on the yield, on the efficiency of the yield. So this is a simple, if you're a farmer and you're trying to pick the perfect tomato, you're adjusting different fertilizers and chemicals and watering and soil, etc., to create that tomato. But in human well-being, it's even more important to consciously note physiological symptoms, emotional symptoms, what are the different metrics of well-being in myself and those around us, and what behaviors are most efficiently producing that well-being, because those behaviors are being done by intelligent human beings.